The area next to my desk is an area I like to keep for me. I like it to be a little bit of an insight for the students into who I am as a person, and keep it as a little memorabilia section. So you can tell my favourite colour really easily. I've got some birthday cards from students, some thank you cards that I've collected across the years, and I keep some of the more personal notes from students in some more private sections on my desk. If you're having a particularly challenging day, it can be really nice just to look around and have those nice reminders of the huge impact that you have on some of these students' lives. So I really like that. Some motivational quotes, never a bad thing, especially period 5 on a Friday, just to give you that last minute oomph as you go through. I have some very random little origami animals that one of my students is obsessed with making. So I've got a nice little collection of various different animals, which just make me smile when I have a look at them. A dinosaur and a swan, I think, which is lovely. I've got some teddies and some memorabilia that students have bought me over the years to say thank you before they've left, etc. Some more birthday cards. And then the important things, stationery for me. So in this box, I have my favourite stationery, the ones that I don't want students necessarily to use. So all my lovely stickers, all my fancy pens, some stamps, things that I don't want the students to be using as their sort of regular stationery, and also all of my student overlays. So for students that benefit from using an overlay to read text, obviously as an English teacher, there's a lot of reading. So making sure that I have everything that they need for whatever reason. If they don't bring that themselves, then they can still access the lesson perfectly well. I then have my stationery section for the students. So I really like my students to be as independent as possible. So they know that there's black pens, green pens, and highlighters. They can walk in, come straight over to get what they need before they sit down. Next to it is everything they'll need in terms of rulers, glue sticks, etc. To foster that independence. They know that they don't have to wait to ask me for a pen before they can learn. They can borrow it, sit down, and just make sure they return it at the end. Lots of our students don't bring bags with them and those sorts of things. Some of them might not be able to afford lots of stationery themselves, so we don't want that to be a barrier to them learning in our lesson. So they come in, lend what they need, and return it at the end without having to put their hand up and ask, which can be a little bit embarrassing for them sometimes. I have all of my organisation over here, so all of my worksheets for the week, any student work that needs to be marked lives there. I have my rewards section kept very close to my desk so that students can't get there without me knowing. I use that mostly for birthdays. So if one of my students has a birthday and they mention it on the way in, I'll give them a little treat, or as a reward for exceptional work or contributions to learning. Some technology, so we're very lucky to have some laptops that students can use to enhance their learning as well. My lovely interactive whiteboard, which is a game changer for things like annotations, etc. Then probably my most prized possession in my classroom, not to be too dramatic, is my stand-up desk. It's on wheels, it can move around quite fluently. And what that means is that I can choose the best vantage point in my classroom to be able to see all of my students and for them to be able to see me very clearly as well. So if one of my students is having a particularly tricky day or struggling to regulate their conduct, I can just nice and easily base myself closer to them. Or if we're watching a video or there's something to read on the board, I can station myself here to be able to see it. And it just gives you much more option, I think, many more opportunities to stand where works for you rather than being tied to your desk area, which can happen a lot of the time, depending on how your room is set out. And then over here is my student folders, all of their resources. I make sure to really clearly label them for which class is which, so that students can be independent and to help me stay organised. If you've had Year 7 Period 1 and Year 11 Period 2, you'll have approximately 30 seconds to switch the books over and get nice and prepared. So the last thing you want to be doing is flicking through to see what class is written on the front. So it allows you to get what you need really quickly and for students to be able to be more organised themselves so they can grab their own books and know exactly where that is. All of our reading books are at the top, nice and visible. We're a learning classroom and a reading classroom, so I like all of our reading books to be really visible, to really promote the fact that we read a lot in English and in lessons. All of my board pens, etc., next to the whiteboard. There is nothing worse than you're about to start writing something in the whiteboard and you cannot find a pen and you're running around. So I keep all of those there. Another game changer is a permanent calendar. So it's one that you can just flick through, so you don't have to buy a new one every year. If for whatever reason I've forgotten to put the date on one of my PowerPoints for my lessons, then students know to look here and they've got everything they need without having to wait for me.